Coming up, the latest on the Trump administration's crackdown on American universities.
New York subway maps get a makeover, but is it for the better?
And President Trump pauses tariffs. So what's next for the market and for trade negotiations?
These stories and more ahead on CJS News.
Good afternoon, I'm Christine Stoddard.
And I'm Callum Foote. Welcome to CJS News. Another wild day on Wall Street. All major American indexes are down right now. This after markets surged when President Trump announced a 90-day pause on global tariffs, but he is still targeting China specifically. This has been the most volatile stock market since the pandemic.
President Trump has announced a 125% tariff on Chinese goods. That move came after Beijing's tariffs on US goods, retaliation for President Trump's initial volley of tariffs announced last week. The back and forth marks a significant escalation in trade tensions between the two countries. Trump's tariffs have economists warning of price increases on everything from smartphones to clothing, triggering fears of inflation. The auto industry could be especially vulnerable since China is a key supplier of electric vehicle parts and batteries.
America's other trading partners still have to contend with the 10% US tariff, but anything beyond that is on hold for 90 days while negotiations take place.
The New York State Health Department has issued a travel advisory for all New Yorkers following measles outbreaks in the U.S. and abroad. The outbreaks are clustered in Texas and New Mexico. Health officials are urging unvaccinated New Yorkers to get up to date on the measles, mumps, and rubella, or MMR vaccine. If you're traveling in the U.S. or abroad, get the vaccine at least 2 weeks before your trip. One dose of the MMR vaccine provides 93% protection against measles. Doctors recommend getting 2 doses. Your protection against measles jumps to 97% with those 2 doses.
Now overseas. Disturbing developments from Gaza, where new evidence contradicts Israel's accounts of killing 15 aid workers.
A newly obtained video shared with the New York Times shows the moments before the aid workers were killed. Contrary to Israeli claims that the ambulances approached without headlights or sirens, the video shows flashing emergency lights as the troops opened fire. All 15 aid workers were killed and buried in an unmarked grave. Israel says that those targeted were linked to Hamas, but it hasn't substantiated that claim. The IDF says they're investigating. Meanwhile, in southern Gaza, an Israeli airstrike hit a tent used by journalists, triggering a fire that killed 2 media workers, including one who had been affiliated with NBC News. Graphic footage circulating online shows one of the journalists engulfed in flames. The Israeli army posted on X that it was targeting a member of Hamas. The IDF says it took measures to reduce the chance of harming civilians, but failed to address why it would bomb a tent of journalists in order to target one of them.
Since October 7th, more than 200 media professionals have been killed in Gaza, a death toll unmatched in any previous conflict. Also in the Middle East, US airstrikes over Yemen continue, with several Houthi and civilian sites targeted.
Back to local news. A preservation group in Harlem is installing historic markers to highlight the neighborhood's rich history and culture. CJS reporter John Williams joins us live from Harlem. John?
Thank you, Christine. The idea for the Harlem Historic Markers Project was originally conceived in 2015. The pandemic delayed things. But now they're up and running and, rising above the streets of this vibrant neighborhood. On Columbia's Manhattanville campus, you may have noticed the purple and gold historic marker on the corner of Broadway and 125th. The marker honors the Lenape Nation, the indigenous people who once lived here. It's the work of the Signs of the Times Harlem Markers Project, an initiative of While We Are Still Here, a nonprofit organization committed to preserving Harlem's legacy. 25 new historic markers installed around the community, honoring events, people, and organizations that give Harlem its unique character.
We wanted to make sure that the history of Harlem is publicly unavoidable. People were polled, and asked what organizations, what individuals, what events do you think should be kind of memorialized with a marker? And that was the start of it.
From Central Park North to 163rd And Broadway to Malcolm X, the markers stand out and draw attention to the rich Black history and cultural legacy up and down the neighborhood's blocks. Over at the Nelson Mandela marker on the corner of 125th and Adam Clayton Powell, neighbors are taking notice.
Nelson Mandela signs, and I take pictures of them every time I see them, and I think it's very important that people need to know where we come from and what's going on in Harlem.
While We're Still Here isn't done yet. The group plans to or hopes to install more signs, more markers, and they're also planning to launch an art series right here at the forum that'll include community discussions, panel events, dances, musics, and so much more. Live in Harlem, John Williams, CJS News.
Thank you, John. The Trump administration is continuing to target higher education. This week, they froze more than $1 billion from just 2 universities.
$1 billion in federal funding for Cornell and $790 million for Northwestern has been halted over alleged civil rights violations. This comes after the White House warned more than 60 universities last month that if they did not do more to combat anti-Semitism on campus, they would be threatened with enforcement actions. Harvard, Yale, and Columbia have also seen funding threatened by the White House for tolerating what they say is anti-Semitism and an anti-American ideology on campus.
Northwestern and Cornell have said they have not been told by the White House which programs are affected.
And universities are not the only institutions facing funding threats. President Trump has suspended a government refugee resettlement program. Now a group of refugee advocates is suing to overturn Trump's executive order. Earlier today, CJS reporter Juliana Giacconi spoke to the group's policy expert.
Amir Siddiqui is a policy and legal expert at the International Refugee Assistance Project. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Siddiqui. So, can you begin by telling me, how does the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program help refugees?
Yeah. So resettlement agencies are kind of like the core organizations that help refugees integrate whenever they arrive in the U.S. So this includes like housing placements, job placements, English language instruction, getting like their health care, getting their kids in school, all those things.
And how is the elimination of the program affecting cities like New York City, which hosts a large number of refugees?
Refugees who are already here and who are relying on resettlement agencies for these services are no longer receiving them. They're kind of just left stranded, they're facing economic insecurity, and some are even facing homelessness.
What's the global significance of the Trump administration's crackdown on refugee resettlement?
We are the largest country to resettle refugees by far. And so last year, the U.S. saw 100,000 refugees admitted to the U.S. And after that, it was Canada and Germany, which only saw a third of that. So without the U.S. being an active role and a leader in the refugee program globally, we're going to see hundreds of thousands of vulnerable people around the world without a pathway to safety.
Juliana, where does the program stand?
For now, a judge has reinstated part of the refugee program, but for the most part, it remains suspended.
Thanks, Juliana. We now want to introduce you to a new segment of our show called The Talk of the Timeline.
Here we feature one of our scroll-stopping social media stories.
And in bad news for matcha drinkers,
fans of the bright green superfood from Japan may have to find a new beverage of choice as cafes brace for a shortage. Our reporter Yumna Sukar has the latest.
If you've spent any time on the internet lately, you've probably heard of matcha.
Do you want to go grab matcha?
Today, I'm going to walk you through how to make a matcha latte.
Today, I'm going to show you the top 5 matcha brands you should try.
And for many, drinking it is part of their morning ritual, me included. But news of a recent shortage means that you may have to swap this for something else. Here's everything you need to know.
Over the last few years, the world has harbored a growing taste for matcha. Between 2010 and 2023, demand for the tea has more than tripled, according to Japan's Ministry of Agriculture. This surge is largely due to social media and a tourism boom in Japan. Zach Mangan, owner of tea company Kettle, says that despite being open for more than 15 years, he has never seen such an appetite for matcha as he does now.
I knew that it was growing, and it's been, long-term steady growth. But this last year, things just really turned a corner in a way that was really surprising. I think right now it's the most in-demand export food product from Japan.
But today, the tea is in short supply. Japanese harvesters are struggling to keep up with global demand. And with President Trump's 24% tariff on Japanese imports, matcha is expected to become more expensive. Producing matcha is both a physically demanding and time-expensive process. The tea's tencha leaves take 4 to 5 years to grow and can only be plucked in the early days of the spring harvest season. There are few farmers to do the job, and long drying times before the tea leaves can be ground into a fine powder.
But in New York, you wouldn't know. Most of the baristas I spoke to at cafes like Chalet, Joe's Coffee and Blank Street Coffee have been busy with their spring-themed matcha flavors.
Honestly, I haven't heard about it at all. This is the first time I've heard that there was a shortage.
I mean, I've seen prices for when I buy matcha go up.
Zach doesn't see the demand slipping anytime soon.
Nothing stays popular that doesn't taste good and doesn't make you feel good.
The Japanese government is currently incentivizing farmers to grow more of the tencha plant to close in on the supply side gap. So while a shortage may be brewing, it's likely to only be seasonal. Yumna Sukar, CJS News, Morningside Heights.
Thank you, Yumna. Not much more to say about that. Subway riders, have you noticed anything different on your morning commute? There's a new subway map making its way to platform monitors throughout the system. It's cleaner, with a minimalist design and bolder colors meant to make quick navigation easier. The map also highlights accessible stations. The map is actually a throwback to a design originally unveiled by the MTA in 1972. The updated version features more legible text, with 1 line for most station names instead of 2. It also features straight lines that are more natural for the eye to follow. Plus, the straight lines make it easier to read on digital devices. The new rollout is already underway. The maps will be posted in subway cars and on platforms over the next several weeks.
And finally, our reporter Anna Kane with an exciting development in the world of cinema. Well, in New York's cinema world at least.
It was a big day for the Upper West Side's art scene. The Metro Theatre, vacant for 20 years, is coming back to life.
People have been asking, what can we do here? What can be done? We've lost a lot of hope for a long time. But finally, it's happened. The acquisition is here, which means now it's in the hands of a nonprofit.
The Upper West Side Cinema Centre purchased the building with help from private foundations and people in the neighbourhood, along with $4 million in state grants. Locals like Taylor Pardee heard the news about the Metro and came out to see the announcement.
It was great that there were so many people and great that they had so much of the whole spectrum of community support. You know, the congressman was there, my neighbors were there.
Now that the non-profit owns the Metro, they'll begin fundraising to transform it into a theatre with 5 screens, with one doubling up as an education centre and a cafe. Co-founder Ira Deutschman says he has high hopes the doors will open in the not-too-distant future.
I'm hoping that we can get it open within 3 years. I'm being told by some people that that's unrealistic, but my attitude is I'm not going to let that be unrealistic.
On the Upper West Side, Anna Kane, CJS News.
Wow, I love the Art Deco architecture.
I know, I can't wait to see it. We'll see if they can get that thing open in 3 years, though.
Thank you so much for joining us for today's CJS News Brief. I'm Christine Stoddard.
And I'm Callum Foote. We'll see you next time. Have a good afternoon.